Theodore J. Kooser, known as Ted, is an American poet. He was born in Ames, Iowa on April 25, 1939. Kooser received his B.S. from Iowa State University and his M.A. in English from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Theodore J. Kooser, known as Ted, is an American poet. He was born in Ames, Iowa on April 25, 1939. Kooser received his B.S. from Iowa State University and his M.A. in English from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Kooser got married twice. In 1977, he married his current wife, Kathleen Rutledge. Kooser worked for an insurance company while pursuing an M.A. in English. Every morning while working at the insurance company, he wrote poems for about 3 hours. Kooser published several volumes of poetry, one being Sure Signs, from which Year's End came from. He has won numerous awards, including the John Bierlin Award for Creative Writing in 1964. In the summer of 2004, Kooser was appointed the 13th Poet Laureate of the United States. As to significant events in his life, there were his 2 marriages, the birth of his son, being diagnosed with cancer, and so on. Much of Kooser's impulse to write poetry came from his need to find ways of dealing with loss. Kooser quit drinking in 1986, and he said that had more of an effect on the course of his life than just about anything else. He said drinking did waste a lot of his time and shaped the way he lived. In high school, Kooser had a couple of good teachers who encouraged his writing. The poets Mae Swenson, William Carlos Williams, and Randall Jarrell Poems had an effect upon him. Mae Swenson in particular seemed to write in any form and about anything. A major influence on Kooser's development as a writer was Carl Shapiro, a writer, teacher, and mentor to him. Another major influence to Kooser was Will Jumper, a poet who taught at Iowa State. Jumper put a lot of emphasis on literary form. Now the seasons are closing their files on each of us, the heavy drawers full of certificates rolling back into the tree trunk. A few old papers flock things away. Someone we love has fallen from our thoughts, making a little glittering splash like a bicycle pushed by a breeze. Otherwise, not much has happened. We fell in love again, finding that one red feather in the wind. Kooser's subject is everyday experience. When Kooser wrote his poems, he wrote with feeling and sentiment. Poetry can enrich everyday experience, making our ordinary world seem quite magical and special. Kooser's poems usually reflect his abiding interest in the past. He often treats themes like love, family, and the passage of time. Jargons are specialized words and expressions that are usually employed by members of specific professions. In the year's end, Kooser writes the phrases, closing their files in heavy drawers. These phrases are jargons of what he did as an insurance agent. Similes are distinguishable because they are introduced by like and as. Kooser uses the phrase glittering splash like a bicycle pushed by a breeze as a simile. This phrase tells how smoothly a person forgets a loved one. When a person dies, it is just an end of one cycle and the beginning of another. Symbolism is one of the primary characteristics of poetry. Ted Kooser's poem Year's End is a symbolic piece of writing that deals with the theme of natural cycles of life, love, and death. His insecurity is revealed through the symbol of the red feather in the wind, which implies love. Tone is the quality of a person's voice. Many of Ted Kooser's poems reflect a dismissive and often depressing tone and attitude. In Year's End, Kooser uses a romantic and depressing tone. He tries to express that which was lost. For example, he talks about the loss of a loved one. Personification is a figure of speech in which an ideal is given human characteristics. For example, the author wrote, "The seasons are closing their files." He is giving the seasons human characteristics to close files. Imagery is a figurative language to represent objects. In The Year's End, Kooser uses kinetic imagery. For example, he uses the words "old papers flowing away." These words describe a visual image of papers rolling away. The papers could be people who are dying away. Denotation indicates conventional correspondences between words and objects. The noun certificate is a denotation of a document serving as evidence or as a written testimony. In The Year's End, Kooser used the denotation certificate to express his proof of divorce with his first wife. Poets have created new and original ways to arrange words and lines. Kooser uses open forms in The Year's End to create a natural and easy-flowing word order. He also uses open forms to express his thoughts and feelings of love, death, and loneliness. Hyperbole, sometimes called overstatement, occurs when you exaggerate a point you are trying to make. Kooser used the phrase "making a little glittering splash" as an understatement. He is trying to emphasize his point about a loved one who has died away. Poets use sendoche to convey and emphasize unusual and vivid imagery. Sendoche makes poetry more effective. Kooser used love as a sendoche. Love is a part of a relationship and romance. Kooser used the word love to emphasize his love for his new wife and his romance. In conclusion, Kooser is an amazing poet. He wrote The Year's End to express his love, the death of a loved one, and his loneliness. This poem indicates that falling in and out of love functions accordingly to the same cycles of life and death. When one love ends, another one is born.